Well, hello and happy 50th. Can you believe this is the 50th edition of 10 with Tom? Who would have known when COVID-19 started and we started having to do all these little updates that this would morph into something like this? That's a lot of content. But we're glad that you're able to join us today for the 50th edition of 10 with Tom. So let's get started. Our verse for today comes to us from Mark chapter 10. It's verses 43 and 44. And it says this: "Whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be servant of all." In order to occupy the high places, sometimes you got to work in the low places. Be a servant. Now, as we start today, I want you to know that each person has value. You know, one time Albert Einstein was quoted as saying, "Everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its entire life believing that it's stupid." Think about that for a minute. Not only do all people have intrinsic value, but they have specific value. You know, some people might say I'm fairly smart, but I certainly don't know everything. I do learn quickly, sometimes, and I have a few God-given talents, but there are also an awful lot of things that I just don't do very well. For instance, working on cars is one of those things where I'm just clueless. Now, when I was in 8th grade, I memorized all of the parts of a car engine for a science test. And then I went out and I aced the test. But you know what? I didn't learn a thing. I can't tell you what the parts of that car engine are, or what they do, or how they all work together. And really, I have no idea what to do if something goes wrong, except to call a mechanic. Well, I guess I can do a little bit. I know how to put in oil and gas and windshield wiper fluid and coolant. But other than that, that's about it. All right. Now, there are people who think that kids that go to technical schools to become mechanics are too dumb in order that they shouldn't be in real school, so they go off and they run into these tech schools so that they can survive. But you know who the dumb ones are? The people who say stuff like that. You know, I read a story about two guys, Steve and Joe, and they worked together in a garage. Steve was in management, and he was known to be very critical of other people who worked at their business. Joe, on the other hand, he was a mechanic. Steve would often remind Joe and the other mechanics in not so subtle ways exactly where they stood on the corporate ladder. But you know, Joe never let it get to him. He just went out and he did his job, and he did it very well. And he would respond to Steve's remarks with things like, "You know, you are really good at what you do, and I'm good at what I do." But he was always gracious to Steve. Now, one day at the end of a shift, Steve went out to his car and the car wouldn't start. But instead of immediately going to Joe and asking him to take a look at it, Steve let his pride get in the way, and so he decided he was going to tinker around with it. And he slowly began to take things apart right there in the parking lot. Now, he didn't know what he was doing. So an hour later, there are pieces spread out all over the parking lot, and the car still hasn't gone anywhere. At this point, in desperation, he pulled out his phone and he called Joe. Joe arrived in minutes. He put the alternator back together, he found the problem, he fixed the problem, and he shook Steve's hand with a smile. And before Steve could say anything, Joe looked him in the eye and he said, "Thank you for asking me to help you, Steve. I really enjoy helping my friends." The look on Steve's face must have been priceless. But you know what? Joe was honestly thankful for the chance to help a friend. He felt valued that Steve would ask him. And from that point on, Steve's attitude toward the other employees in the shop began to change as he began to see the value in all of the workers, regardless of what it was that they did. And you see, we all have value. So don't make a fool out of yourself by trying to put others in their place, because we all have a place. Remember that today. Now, I had a mechanic like Joe one time, and I really miss him. When I took my first full-time youth ministry job, I was working at a church, and we had 5 pastors on staff, and there was a guy in our church who was a local mechanic. He worked at a garage, and his name was Al. Al didn't make a whole lot of money, but he did okay as a mechanic. He had a nice family and worked hard, and Al couldn't give big dollars financially to the church, but he wanted to give the best he could. And so he went to the pastors and he said, look, he said, whenever you guys have a need to get your car fixed, whether it's just changing the oil or if there's something more serious, bring the car to my shop, ask for me, and he said, I will take care of your car. He said, the only thing I will ever charge you for are parts that are needed. He said, I will never charge you for labor. That's my gift to you. That's my gift to the church. And you know what? That was a huge gift. I don't know about the other pastors, but I know in the 8 years that I was there, he saved me thousands of dollars. And I so appreciated Alan. He was such a valuable member of our church. And so, I share that story with you in relation to this other story, that no matter what you do, you have value and you have impact. So remember that. Okay? Now, in order to appreciate the people around us, who you may think might not be as gifted as you are, I want you to think about some things that you can do this week to let them know what a special place they have. For instance, make it a point this week to find 3 people who work physically very hard at something, and thank them for what they do and let them know you appreciate them. Right now, it's hot. It's really hot. It was like 96 degrees yesterday. It's supposed to be 95 today. Right? If you see people that are working outside in the heat, let them know you appreciate what they do because they work hard. Help your family at home today by doing something without being asked to do it. See a need, just jump in and do it. We just had Father's Day. Before that, it was Mother's Day. We talk a lot about thanking Mom and Dad. One of the best ways you can thank Mom and Dad is just stepping in and making their job a little bit easier by doing one of the things that they would ask you to do before they ask, or doing something that they would ordinarily do that you can do. All right? So step in. Take an interest in the people that serve you. For instance, whenever you get your hair cut, get to know the person that's cutting your hair a little bit. Ask them questions about themselves. Allow them to talk about themselves and where they're from, and maybe how they got started cutting hair, and the places that their job has taken them through the years. Build a relationship with them, and they will appreciate the fact that you see them as an individual, not just as somebody who's cutting your hair. If you see a homeless person by a fast food store, offer to buy them a burger. And then, if they're willing, sit and talk with them for a couple of minutes. Get to know their story a little bit. Get to know their name. Because when we can call them by name, it validates who they are. All right? And the last one on the list, demonstrate respect for waitstaff at restaurants by cleaning up your mess at the table and then leaving a decent tip for your servers. That's one of my pet peeves, is when we go to a restaurant and I see people taking their drinks and they have a drink that's half finished and they start putting salt and pepper in it and then throwing straw wrappers in there and napkins and just making a mess of things. Why? The people that are in there are working hard, but they shouldn't have to clean up your messes. They're there to clean up the table, but don't make it worse for them. All right? Let them know that they're appreciated. Make their job a little bit easier. And remember to tip your servers. All right? They rely on that money, and they work hard for it. And so tip them well. Let them know that they're appreciated. All right? Those are things that you can do to validate the people around you. So I hope you'll keep all of that in mind. So remember, you have value. They have value. God loves each and every one of us. All right? No matter what you do, you are valuable and you are of great value to God. And He will never leave or forsake you because you matter. All right? Have a wonderful Tuesday, and we'll catch up with you again on Thursday on 10 with Tom.